Madison, get in the frame. I want to show my followers we've arrived in London. Elizabeth Caldwell held her phone at arm's length, angling to capture both herself and her reluctant teenage daughter with Heathrow Airport's welcome sign in the background. Madison Caldwell ducked out of view, her cheeks flushing. "Mom, please! No one cares that we just got off a flight looking like zombies." "Nonsense! My followers love travel content." Elizabeth adjusted her designer sunglasses and smiled brightly at her phone. "Hello, everyone. Lizzie Caldwell here, coming to you live from London, England. We just survived that dreadful 7-hour flight, and we're ready to experience all things British." Madison rolled her eyes, yanking her suitcase towards the exit. At 17, she'd become painfully aware of her mother's social media obsession over the past few years. What had once been occasional family photos had morphed into constant documentation, with Elizabeth, who insisted everyone call her Lizzie online, narrating their lives as if starring in her own reality show. The fact that she had only about 2,000 followers, mostly other middle-aged suburban mums from their Ohio neighborhood, didn't seem to dampen her enthusiasm. "Madison, wait up. I need to get a shot of us getting into our first London taxi." "It's called a cab here, Mum." Madison mumbled, but dutifully paused. "Whatever. My followers won't know the difference." Sergeant James Wilson adjusted his bearskin cap with practiced precision. After 10 years in the Queen's Guard, the morning routine was second nature. Uniform inspection, equipment check, briefing. Yet he still felt the same pride he had during his first week of duty. "Wilson, you've got Northgate this morning," Staff Sergeant Parker informed him. "Tourist numbers are expected to be high. School holidays in the States." James nodded. "Understood, sir." His fellow guard, Corporal Thomas Ainsley, nudged him. "Americans. Always a laugh, aren't they?" "Some are respectful," James replied diplomatically. Others think we're animatronic displays put there for their amusement." Thomas finished with a slight smile. James's thoughts drifted briefly to his father and grandfather, both of whom had served in the Queen's Guard. His grandfather had often told stories of maintaining composure during the most absurd tourist encounters. "The uniform represents something larger than yourself," he'd said. "Never forget that." "5 minutes, gentlemen," Parker called out. James squared his shoulders. Another day protecting one of Britain's most sacred institutions and dealing with whatever the public might throw at him. "Mum, it says right here that we're not supposed to touch the guards or get in their way." Madison held up the guidebook she'd been reading in their hotel room. "They're actual soldiers on active duty, not tourist attractions." Elizabeth waved dismissively as she applied another layer of lipstick. "Of course they're tourist attractions. Why else would they dress like that? Those big fuzzy hats must be so hot." "They're called bearskins, and they're part of their ceremonial uniform. It's a tradition that goes back hundreds of years." Elizabeth snapped her compact shut. "Well, I'm going to get some great content. My followers will love seeing those funny guards. Maybe I can make one of them smile." Madison groaned. "Mom, seriously, that's exactly what you're not supposed to do. It's disrespectful." "Oh, lighten up. This is why you don't have many friends, Madison. You're always so serious." Elizabeth checked her reflection one final time. "Besides, what are they going to do? They can't move." Madison bit back a retort. This vacation was already going exactly as she'd feared. The morning sun beat down on Buckingham Palace as tourists gathered along the perimeter. James stood at attention at his post, focusing on a distant point as he'd been trained. 2 hours into his shift, and the day was already proving challenging. The heat made the heavy ceremonial uniform even more uncomfortable than usual. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a blonde woman with an American accent making her way through the crowd, phone extended on a selfie stick. "Excuse me, coming through. American visitor here, just trying to get a good shot." The woman pushed past a British family, who exchanged annoyed glances. Behind her trailed a teenage girl, who looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. "Mom, please," the girl whispered urgently. "You're being loud." "Madison, I'm just making sure people hear me. The British are so quiet all the time." An elderly British couple standing nearby turned to Madison with sympathetic smiles. "First time in London, dear?" the woman asked kindly. Madison nodded, grateful for the friendly face. "Yes, I'm sorry about my mum." "Quite all right. We're used to enthusiastic tourists." The man replied. "I'm Arthur, and this is my wife Margaret. Our granddaughter Pippa is around here somewhere." "I'm Madison. We're here for 2 weeks." Margaret smiled. "How lovely. The changing of the guard is quite spectacular. It should begin in about 30 minutes. "What's that?" Elizabeth interjected, suddenly interested in the conversation. Arthur began to explain. "It's a formal ceremony where... Is it like a parade? That would make excellent content." Elizabeth didn't wait for an answer before turning back to her phone. Note to self: film the guard changing thing. James maintained his position, but he'd picked up on the conversation. Americans like this woman were unfortunately common, loud, entitled, and treating British traditions as if they were Disney attractions. Still, he reminded himself, most visitors were respectful. He just had to maintain his composure for another hour. Elizabeth spotted James standing at attention and made a beeline for him. "Ooh, Madison! This one looks perfect! He's younger than the others." "Mom, please don't bother him," Madison pleaded, but Elizabeth was already approaching the rope barrier, phone held high. "Hello, followers. I'm here at Buckingham Palace, and I'm about to meet one of those famous guards with the fuzzy hats." A palace security officer in a dark suit noticed her enthusiasm and moved closer, keeping a watchful eye. Elizabeth walked right up to the rope line, just a few feet from James. "Hello there, Mr. Guard. Can you give a little wave to my followers? I've got almost 2,000 people watching." James remained perfectly still, staring straight ahead as trained. "I think he's shy," Elizabeth Stage whispered to her phone. "Let me try again." She raised her voice. "Hello, can you hear me in there?" Several nearby tourists cringed. Madison hung back, pretending to be absorbed in her guidebook. A young British girl around Madison's age approached her. "Is that your mum, then?" Madison looked up mortified. "Unfortunately. I'm Pippa. My grandparents mentioned they met you." "Madison. And yes, that's my mum embarrassing herself, and me, on an international level." Pippa smiled sympathetically. "The guards deal with this sort of thing all day. Your mum's not even the worst today." "Give her time," Madison muttered. Elizabeth was getting frustrated by James's lack of response. "These guards are so rude. I just want a little interaction for my video." She leaned closer to the rope. "Do they even let you take bathroom breaks? Blink once for yes, twice for no." The security officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, please keep a respectful distance and tone. The Queen's Guards are on active duty." Elizabeth turned her camera towards the officer. "Oh, look, a real person who can actually talk. Tell me, why do you make these poor men stand out here like statues?" "Ma'am, these are highly trained soldiers performing an official duty. Please respect the barriers and the rules." Elizabeth huffed. "I'm just trying to liven things up a bit. My followers want to see something interesting." The security officer remained polite but firm. "The changing of the guard will begin shortly. You're welcome to film that from the public viewing area." "Fine," Elizabeth said, not hiding her annoyance. As the officer walked away, she turned back to James. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let me introduce myself properly." To Madison's horror, her mother ducked under the rope. "Mom!" she called out in panic. "That's not allowed!" "I'm just getting a better angle," Elizabeth replied, positioning herself much closer to James. "Hello, Mr. Guard. I'm Lizzie Caldwell from Columbus, Ohio. I'm an influencer." James maintained his forward stare, but his training immediately kicked in. A civilian had crossed the barrier. This was now a potential security situation. Protocol required a verbal warning before action. "Step back behind the rope immediately, ma'am," he said firmly, not changing his position. Elizabeth's face lit up. "Oh my God, he talked! Did you hear that, followers? I got him to break character." "Mom, get back here right now," Madison begged, mortified as people began to stare. The security officer was already returning at a brisk pace. Speaking into his radio, "I just want to ask a few questions," Elizabeth continued, ignoring both her daughter and the approaching security. "Do you get hot in that silly outfit? And how heavy is that gun? Is it even real?" James remained stoic. "Step back behind the rope immediately, ma'am. This is your final warning." "Or what? You'll arrest me?" Elizabeth laughed, turning to make sure her phone was capturing everything. "These guards aren't allowed to move, everyone. It's all for show." A small boy tugged at his mother's sleeve nearby. "Mummy, why is that lady being mean to the soldier?" "Some people forget their manners when they travel, Oliver," his mother replied quietly. The security officer reached Elizabeth. "Ma'am, you need to step back behind the barrier now, or you will be removed from the grounds." "This is ridiculous. I paid good money to visit this country. I have rights. One of which is not to interfere with royal guards on duty. Please move back now." Madison had covered her face with her hands, peeking through her fingers at the unfolding disaster. Pippa patted her shoulder. "If it makes you feel any better, my dad once got so drunk in Spain he fell into a fountain. Parents are embarrassing everywhere." "Thanks," Madison mumbled, "but I think my mom's going for the gold medal." Elizabeth grudgingly stepped back, but continued filming. "Can you believe this, followers? British hospitality at its finest." A palace staff member announced that the changing of the guard ceremony would begin momentarily, and visitors should remain behind the designated viewing areas. Elizabeth saw her opportunity. "Ooh, perfect timing. I'm going to get the best angle for you all." She darted forward again, positioning herself at the edge of the ceremonial path where the new guards would march. "Ma'am, you cannot stand there," the security officer called, moving toward her again. "I'm just getting a good shot. I'll move when they get close." Elizabeth insisted, holding her phone up high. What Elizabeth didn't realize was that behind her, just within frame of her video, something unexpected was happening. A small boy in a wheelchair wearing a Make-A-Wish cap was being escorted by a palace staff member to a special viewing area. The boy, clearly weakened by illness, but eyes bright with excitement, was positioned where he could see the ceremony up close. James had noticed the boy immediately. He looked remarkably like his nephew Ben, who was battling leukemia back home in Bristol. Though his face remained impassive, his heart tightened in his chest. As the boy settled into position, his eyes locked with James's. Protocol dictated no interaction, but in that moment, James made a nearly imperceptible decision. While maintaining his formal stance, he gave the slightest, almost undetectable nod of acknowledgement to the boy. The child's face lit up with pure joy, as if he'd just been given the greatest gift imaginable. Elizabeth, entirely focused on her own disruption, captured this moment in the background of her video without even realizing it. "Ma'am, this is your final warning," the security officer said, now joined by a police constable. "You must move now." "Fine! I'm getting manhandled by British security, everyone. Make sure to like and share," Elizabeth exclaimed dramatically as they escorted her back behind the barriers. Madison finally reached her breaking point. As her mother was led back to the public area, she stepped forward. "Mom, that's enough!" Her voice carried more than she'd intended, causing nearby tourists to turn and stare. Elizabeth looked shocked. "Madison, not now. I'm in the middle of recording." "I don't care. You're embarrassing yourself and everyone around you. Those are real soldiers doing an important job, and you're treating them like they're props for your stupid videos." Elizabeth's mouth fell open. "How dare you speak to me like that? I'm trying to create memories of our trip." "No, You're trying to get attention online, and you don't care who you disrespect in the process." Madison's voice cracked with emotion. "I've spent this entire trip apologizing for you. I just wanted to actually learn something about another country and spend time with my mom, not whatever this is." A small crowd had gathered around them, and Madison suddenly realized she'd created a scene of her own. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she stood her ground. Elizabeth lowered her phone, momentarily speechless. The police constable cleared his throat. "I'll need to see your phone, ma'am. Filming in restricted areas is prohibited." "What?" "No, I have rights. You have the right to comply or be taken to the station," he replied calmly. "Your choice." 2 hours later, Elizabeth sat in a small room at the local police station, her perfectly planned London adventure in tatters. "This is outrageous," she muttered for the 5th time. "All for a harmless video." Madison sat across from her, texting her father back in Ohio. "Dad wants to know if he needs to call the embassy," she said without looking up. "Maybe he should. This country is ridiculous." The door opened, and the constable entered with Elizabeth's phone. "You're free to go, Mrs. Caldwell. We've removed the footage from the restricted area, but the rest of your content remains intact. Consider this a warning." Elizabeth snatched her phone back. "Finally, some sense!" As they left the station, Elizabeth's phone began buzzing incessantly with notifications. "What on earth?" She opened her social media app and gasped. Her follower count had jumped from 2,000 to over 20,000 in the past hour. The video she'd posted before being stopped by security, the one showing her crossing the barrier, had been shared thousands of times. "I've gone viral!" she exclaimed, momentarily forgetting her anger. "See, Madison, people love authentic travel content." Madison peered at her mother's phone and winced. "Mom, they're not sharing it because they like it. Read the comments." Elizabeth scrolled through, and her excitement faltered. Classic American Karen harassing Royal Guard. "This is why everyone hates American tourists." Her poor daughter looks mortified. "What? This isn't fair. They don't understand what I was trying to do." Madison sighed. "Come on, let's go back to the hotel. This has been enough excitement for one day." As they walked, Elizabeth continued scrolling through comments, her expression shifting from outrage to confusion. "Wait, people keep mentioning something in the background. What are they talking about?" Back at their hotel, Elizabeth finally watched her own video properly. There she was, loudly demanding attention from the guard while positioning herself for the ceremony. But in the background, clearly visible over her shoulder, was the moment between James and the sick boy. The subtle nod, the boy's face lighting up with joy. Comment after comment pointed it out. "Ignore the Karen. Watch the guard with the sick child in the background." That little moment between the guard and the boy in the wheelchair has me crying. This is what should have been the focus of the video. Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, a strange feeling washing over her. For the first time, she saw herself as others saw her, loud, entitled, demanding attention, while completely missing the genuine moment happening just feet away. "Madison," she began, her voice small. "Did you see this?" Madison sat beside her mother and watched the clip again. "No, I was too busy dying of embarrassment. But, wow, that's actually really beautiful." Elizabeth's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Mrs. Caldwell? This is Sean Richards from the Daily Mail. We're interested in licensing your video of the Royal Guard and the Make-A-Wish child." More calls followed. BBC, Good Morning Britain, even American networks. The video had exploded, but not because of Elizabeth's antics. She had inadvertently captured a powerful human moment that resonated with millions. "They want to interview us," Elizabeth told Madison after the 5th call. "What are you going to say? That you were too busy harassing the guard to notice what was happening?" Elizabeth flinched at her daughter's words. I don't know." Later that evening, as Madison slept, Elizabeth read an article about the boy in her video. 7-year-old Oliver Fletcher was battling stage 4 neuroblastoma. His wish had been to see the Royal Guards at Buckingham Palace. The palace had arranged a special viewing area for him during his visit. Another article identified the guard as Sergeant James Wilson, though he had declined all interview requests. Elizabeth closed her eyes, shame washing over her. She had turned a sacred tradition into a spectacle for social media validation, while a real soldier had shown true humanity without breaking protocol. The next morning, Elizabeth was uncharacteristically quiet at breakfast. "I've been thinking," she finally said. "I want to try to make this right." Madison looked up from her tea, surprised. "How?" "I need to apologize. To the guard, to that boy's family, to everyone, really." She pushed her plate away. "And to you, Madison. I'm sorry I've been so focused on documenting this trip that I haven't actually been present for it. With you." Madison studied her mother's face, searching for sincerity. "Really?" "Yes, and I turned down all those interview requests." "You did? I thought you'd love the attention." Elizabeth shook her head. "Not like this. It wouldn't be right." Through proper channels and with surprising humility, Elizabeth requested a brief meeting with Sergeant Wilson. To her surprise, it was granted. A short, supervised conversation at Wellington Barracks the following day. James Wilson wore his standard military uniform rather than the ceremonial guard attire when he met Elizabeth and Madison in a small office at the barracks. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Elizabeth said, her usual confidence subdued. "I wanted to apologize in person for my behavior yesterday." James stood straight, but less rigid than on duty. "I appreciate that, Mrs. Caldwell. I was disrespectful to you, to your position, and to your country's traditions. There's no excuse for that." James nodded. "Many visitors don't understand the purpose behind what we do. The ceremonial aspect sometimes overshadows the fact that we're active military personnel." "The boy in the wheelchair," Elizabeth said hesitantly. "I saw what happened in my video. That small moment you shared." Something softened in James's professional demeanor. "Oliver." "Yes. It was beautiful, real. Everything my ridiculous performance wasn't." James shifted slightly. "My nephew Ben has the same condition. 7 years old, fighting like a champion." "I'm so sorry," Elizabeth said quietly. "The rules are strict about interaction while on duty." James continued. "But some moments, some connections, they matter more than protocol." Elizabeth nodded. "I've turned down all media requests about the video. It feels wrong to profit from a moment I nearly ruined." "Oliver's family could use the attention, actually," James replied. "His treatments are expensive. His parents have a fundraising page." Elizabeth looked up, an idea forming. What if I used my video, with their permission, of course, to direct people to their fundraiser? No interviews, no focus on me, just Oliver's story." Madison watched her mother with new respect. "That's actually a really good idea, Mum." James considered for a moment. "I think that could be arranged. I'll speak with my commanding officer and reach out to Oliver's family." As they prepared to leave, Elizabeth extended her hand. "Thank you, Sergeant Wilson, for your service, your forgiveness, and for showing me what really matters." "Safe travels, Mrs. Caldwell," he replied, shaking her hand firmly. "And Madison, I hope the rest of your London visit is memorable, for the right reasons." Madison smiled. "It already is." 1 week later, back in Columbus, Elizabeth sat at her kitchen table composing a new post. Her viral moment had transformed into something unexpected, a fundraising campaign for Oliver that had already raised over £50,000 for his treatment and childhood cancer research. "How's this sound?" she asked Madison, who was making a sandwich nearby. I'm listening, Madison replied. Thank you to everyone who has contributed to Oliver's fund. The real guard of honor is this brave young boy and all children fighting similar battles. My trip to London taught me more than I expected about respect, tradition, and focusing on what truly matters. Sometimes what the camera catches isn't what you thought you were filming. Madison nodded approvingly. Much better than your usual #soup. Elizabeth smiled, then put her phone face down on the table. Want to go for a walk? No phones, no photos, just us. Madison looked at her mother with surprise. For real? For real? I'm trying this new thing called being present. As they walked through their neighborhood, Elizabeth found herself noticing things she'd overlooked for years. The changing leaves, her daughter's laugh, the simple pleasure of a conversation without interruption. At Buckingham Palace, Sergeant James Wilson stood at attention at the same post. A small boy in a wheelchair approached with his parents, stopping at a respectful distance behind the rope barrier. There he is, Oliver, his mother said. That's Sergeant Wilson. Oliver's face lit up with recognition. The guard who nodded at me. Remember, we don't disturb him while he's working, his father reminded gently. Oliver nodded solemnly. I know. He has an important job. The boy held up a small sign he had made. Thank you for making my wish special. James maintained his forward stare, the perfect picture of discipline and tradition. But as the family took a photo and prepared to move on, he gave another almost imperceptible nod, a moment of humanity within the bounds of duty. Some traditions were meant to be honored, and some moments, caught on camera or not, were simply meant to be remembered.